Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going deep into Frankenstein.
Oh, Frankenstein.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're going to be taking a close look at the creature.
Okay.
And, you know, not just as the monster,
Mm-hmm.
but like as a character.
Right.
And you've provided a stack of materials,
Mm-hmm.
excerpts from study guides and character breakdowns and all kinds of stuff.
Yeah, I did.
So we're going to be sifting through all that stuff to uncover Shelley's message about society and ambition.
Oh, interesting.
And what makes us human,
Okay.
all that good stuff.
Well, what I think is so intriguing about this deep dive is that the creature is often so misunderstood. We tend to fixate on that monster label, but there's so much more depth to explore.
Oh, for sure. And Shelley really makes a strong first impression.
Oh, yeah.
She doesn't hold back when it comes to describing how this creature looks.
Yeah.
She uses phrases like unearthly ugliness and watery eyes.
Wow.
It's almost like she's going for the opposite of what Victor Frankenstein intended, beauty.
Right.
So what do you think? What was Shelley going for here?
Well, it's very deliberate, of course. I think she's playing with that whole idea that outer appearance reflects inner character,
Yeah?
which was a very prevalent concept during her time. But it's interesting to think about, is she just setting us up to fear the creature just because he looks different? Or is there something more to it?
That's a good point, because then we see the creature, and he's not really what you'd expect.
Right.
He's actually capable of empathy.
Yeah.
He lives off of berries, nuts, and roots, rather than stealing from the DeLacy family, and they're struggling themselves.
Right.
He chooses not to do that.
Yeah, and what's really fascinating here is that he actually enjoys seeing them happy, and he feels sad when they're not.
Oh, wow.
It really makes you wonder, is this monstrous nature that everybody assumes he has really just a result of how he's treated?
It's like she's saying nurture plays a bigger role than nature.
Exactly. It's like a social experiment.
Yeah.
What happens to someone inherently good when they're constantly met with fear and rejection based on how they look?
And that's where the DeLacy family comes in.
Right.
At first, they seem like a chance for the creature to experience some kindness and acceptance.
Yeah.
But things take a dark turn.
They do. Despite their initial kindness, the moment they see the creature,
Yeah.
fear takes over.
Wow.
And they reject him based solely on his appearance.
Precisely like that.
And that rejection, it fuels his rage
Oh, wow.
and sets him on that path of vengeance.
Okay.
And I think this is where Shelley is making a powerful statement, Prejudice has real and devastating consequences.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking because he craved that connection so much that he actually begged Victor to create a female companion for him.
But he did.
And he promised that if Victor did that, he would isolate himself from humanity with her.
Yeah.
But Victor, driven by fear, just destroys the female creature before she's even complete.
He does. And that's such a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Because Victor is so obsessed with his creation and terrified of what it might become, that he actually reinforces the creature's isolation. He prioritizes his own fear over the creature's plea for companionship.
Right.
And ultimately, that decision leads to more tragedy.
I was reading this and it just makes you wonder, is Victor just as monstrous as the creature he created?
I know. It's an interesting thought, right?
But one thing that really struck me was how the creature communicates.
Oh, yeah.
He's so eloquent. It's not what you expect from someone who's called a monster.
Yeah, that's a fascinating observation. You're right. His language is often much more sophisticated than Victor's, especially when he describes his experiences and desires.
Right.
He even references Paradise Lost.
It's like she's giving him a platform, allowing him to express his thoughts and feelings and challenge our assumptions about what a monster is.
Exactly. Precisely. By giving him that kind of voice,
Yeah.
she forces us to acknowledge his intelligence, his emotional depth. He's not just a mindless beast. He's a thinking, feeling being capable of complex thought and expression.
It really flips the power dynamic on its head.
It does.
Because Victor might have created him,
Yeah.
but the creature seems to have a better grasp of the human condition than Victor himself.
Yeah, that's a brilliant insight. Because he's so self-aware and he's able to articulate his experiences, he becomes kind of like a powerful critic of both Victor and the society that rejects him.
And all that complexity is even more apparent at the end of the novel.
Yeah.
The creature shows remorse, he weeps over Victor's body, and he vows to end his own life. That scene really stuck with me.
It's a moment that has sparked endless debate.
Really?
Yeah, is he truly evil, as his actions might suggest?
Yeah.
Or is he ultimately a tragic victim, a product of both Victor's ambition and society's cruelty?
So is there even like a definitive answer?
I think that's the question Shelley leaves us with.
Okay.
And I think that's the point. It's
Yeah.
not about easy answers. It's about recognizing the complexity of his character,
Right.
his capacity for both good and evil, and all the forces that shaped him.
It's not about labeling him a monster. It's about understanding how he became the creature that we see.
Exactly.
It's such a powerful message.
It's a message that definitely resonates today, How often do we judge others based on appearances or preconceived notions?
Right.
The creature's story really encourages us to look deeper, to recognize the nuances of human experience, and to consider the consequences of our own actions and prejudices.
I love that. And there's so much more to unpack.
Yeah, there is.
We've only just scratched the surface here.
You've just begun to dive in.
So let's continue this exploration, and we'll delve deeper into the creature's story, his journey, his relationships, and his impact on the world around him.
Sounds good.
Stay tuned.
This is where it gets really fascinating. As we continue this deep dive into the creature's character, I think it's important to highlight how Shelley uses specific literary techniques to shape our perception of him.
Oh, yeah, definitely. It's not just what she's saying, but how she says it.
Precisely one technique that really stands out is foreshadowing.
Okay.
It's subtle, but she weaves these hints throughout the narrative, subtly preparing us for that darkness to come.
Oh, okay. I'm intrigued. Can you give me an example?
Well, think back to chapter 5.
Okay.
Victor has that vivid dream right after creating the creature.
Yeah.
He sees Elizabeth vibrant and full of life,
Mm-hmm.
but when he kisses her, her lips turn livid with the hue of death.
Oh, wow, that's chilling. But how does that relate to the creature? I don't remember him being in the dream.
Yeah, it's not a direct appearance, but it foreshadows Elizabeth's tragic fate.
Oh, right.
And we know who's ultimately responsible for her death.
Oh, I see. So Shelley is subtly linking Victor's creation to the tragedy that unfolds.
Exactly. It's almost like a warning.
Yeah.
A glimpse into the potential consequences of Victor's ambition. He wants to conquer death and to create life. But the dream suggests that his actions will have a very dark side.
And this idea of light and darkness seems to come up a lot in the book.
Oh, it does. It's a recurring motif early on. Victor talks about wanting to bring a torrent of light into our dark world with his scientific discoveries. He sees his work as illuminating the unknown.
But as the story progresses, things get a little darker, right?
Yeah, do.
And the creature kind of embodies that darkness.
That's a great observation, the creature with his grotesque appearance and those horrific acts that he commits.
Right.
He becomes a symbol of the darkness that Victor has unleashed. The light of knowledge, his ambition has become corrupted.
So it's like the novel itself becomes a cautionary tale.
It does.
About tampering with nature playing God.
Yeah, and the devastating repercussions of that.
I have to admit, even though he does some pretty terrible things, I still feel kind of sympathetic towards the creature.
I understand that completely. It's a testament to Shelley's skill as a writer, that she can create a character who is both monstrous and sympathetic at the same time.
It's not just black and white, right? He does these horrible things.
Yeah.
But you also see this yearning for connection, this pain at being rejected.
Exactly.
It's complicated.
It's incredibly complex, and that's what makes him such a fascinating character.
Yeah.
And such an enduring one. He challenges our preconceived notions of good and evil and forces us to confront some pretty uncomfortable truth about ourselves and the world that we live in.
So it all comes back to that question. Is he inherently monstrous, or is he a product of his environment, the way he's been treated?
Precisely. Shelley seems to be suggesting that we all have the potential for both good and evil within us.
Yeah.
It's our choices, our actions, and the way we treat each other that ultimately shape who we become.
That's a powerful message.
It is.
It really makes you think about how we treat people who are different.
Yeah.
Those who don't quite fit in.
Yeah.
The creature's isolation and rejection. There's such a stark reminder of the consequences of prejudice and fear.
And what's so interesting is that despite his monstrous appearance, the creature is so deeply affected by the beauty that he observes in nature. He finds solace and comfort in the natural world, which really contrasts sharply with the cruelty he experiences from humans.
It's like nature accepts him.
Right.
But society shuns him.
Yeah.
That's a really interesting contrast. How do you think that connects to the bigger picture of the creature's character?
Well, I think it speaks to his inherent longing for goodness and beauty.
Okay.
He's drawn to those positive aspects of humanity, even though he's constantly confronted with its darkness.
Hmm.
He can appreciate art music literature,
Yeah.
which I think further complicates our understanding of him.
You mentioned literature earlier. Can we talk a little bit more about the creature's education?
Absolutely.
That was something that really stood out to me in the source material.
Yes, this is such a crucial element of his character development. Remember, despite his isolation, he manages to educate himself.
I know, it's amazing.
He stumbles upon this collection of books,
Yeah.
including Paradise Lost, Plutarch's Lives,
Right.
Goethe's Sorrows of Young Werther. He devours these texts, absorbing knowledge about history, philosophy, the complexities of human emotion.
So he's not just strong, he's smart too.
Exactly. And, he grapples with these complex concepts. He even compares himself to Satan in Paradise Lost.
Oh, really?
He feels this kinship with this fallen angel who rebelled against his creator.
Wow, that's a powerful comparison.
It is. It really highlights his sense of alienation, his feeling of being cast out and rejected by both his creator and society.
So his education, in a way, both empowers him and kind of torments him at the same time.
You hit the nail on the head. It gives him a deeper understanding of the world, but also makes him more aware of his own isolation and rejection.
It's like he understands the ideals of good and evil,
Right.
but his emotional wounds prevent him from actually living up to those ideals.
Yeah.
It's like a tragic paradox.
It is. And, that inner conflict is at the very heart of his character. He's constantly wrestling with his inherent goodness and that darkness that threatens to consume him.
This is making me think about how Shelley uses language to portray the creature. We talked about how eloquent he is,
Yeah.
but I'm wondering if there's more to it. Does his language change throughout the story?
That's an excellent question.
Yeah.
And you're right, there is a noticeable evolution in the creature's language as the story progresses.
Oh, interesting.
Initially, his speech is very simple, almost childlike,
Okay.
reflecting his innocence and naivete.
Uh-huh.
But as he experiences more of the world, particularly the cruelty of humanity,
Right.
his language becomes more sophisticated,
Oh, see.
even bitter at times.
So it's like his language mirrors his emotional state.
It does.
As he becomes more jaded, his words become more powerful, more accusatory.
Precisely. Shelley uses this linguistic shift to underscore the creature's transformation from a being of pure potential
Yeah.
to a creature consumed by rage and vengeance.
Right.
His words become weapons,
Wow.
reflecting the pain and anger he feels toward the world that has rejected him.
She's giving him a voice to challenge Victor and society.
Exactly.
He's not just a mindless monster. He can articulate his suffering
Right.
and his indictment of those who've wronged him.
You got it. And this use of language is so crucial to understanding his complexity.
Yeah.
He's not a one-dimensional villain. He's multifaceted. And his words reveal his intelligence, his emotional depth, his evolving worldview.
It's incredible how Shelley uses all these different elements, the foreshadowing, the symbolism, the language,
Yeah.
to create such a rich and thought-provoking portrait of this creature.
Yeah.
She's not just telling a story, she's inviting us to grapple with these really complex questions about humanity and morality and the consequences of our choices.
And that's the beauty of great literature.
Yeah.
It challenges us, provokes
Yeah.
us, compels us to confront those uncomfortable truths that we might otherwise try to avoid. The creature story forces us to look in the mirror
Yeah.
and ask ourselves what role we play in creating the monsters in our own world.
That's a chilling thought,
Yes.
but so true. We can't just point fingers at the creature. We have to examine our own biases,
Yeah.
our own fears,
Absolutely.
and our own complicity in perpetuating these cycles of prejudice and rejection.
The creature's story is a reminder that we're all responsible for creating a world where everyone feels seen, heard, and valued regardless of their differences.
I love that.
It's a call to action.
Yeah.
A plea for empathy and understanding in a world that often seems to prioritize fear and division.
It's not just about analyzing a character.
Right.
It's about applying these insights to our own lives.
Exactly.
But speaking of analyzing, we haven't even touched on the creature's relationship with Victor yet.
Oh, that's a conversation for itself.
Yeah.
It's such a complex and deeply dysfunctional relationship.
Right.
Full of resentment, fear, and this kind of twisted sense of obligation.
Okay, so we definitely need to unpack that. And I'm really curious to explore what happens when the creature finally confronts his creator, what leads up to that pivotal moment.
Well, before we jump into that confrontation,
Mm.
I think it's important to understand the psychological impact of abandonment on the creature.
Okay.
Victor essentially rejects his creation the moment it comes to life,
Hmm.
leaving him to fend for himself in a world that fears and despises him.
We often focus on the physical horror of his appearance,
Right.
but the emotional trauma of being abandoned by his creator is just as horrific, if not more so.
Exactly. And that abandonment has a profound impact on the creature's development.
Yeah.
It shapes his worldview,
Hmm.
fuels his rage,
Right.
ultimately drives him to seek revenge against the one who brought him into existence but refused to take responsibility for him.
It's like a vicious cycle. Victor's fear and rejection create a monster, and then that monster turns on its creator, demanding recognition and retribution.
It's a tragic dance of destruction,
Wow.
fueled by this lack of empathy and understanding on both sides.
Right.
Victor fails to see the creature as anything more than a monstrous abomination, and the creature in turn fails to see Victor as anything other than the source of his pain and isolation.
So is their relationship just doomed from the start? Is there any hope for reconciliation?
That's a great question, and it's one that Shelley explores with incredible nuance.
Okay.
There are moments where it seems like a connection might be possible, these fleeting glimpses of understanding and empathy,
Mm-hmm.
but ultimately their shared history of pain and resentment proves too difficult to overcome.
So it's a story of missed opportunities, the destructive power of fear, and the tragic consequences of failing to see the humanity in others, even those who are different from us.
You've captured it perfectly,
Yeah.
and as we delve deeper into their confrontation, you'll see how these themes come to a head in a truly unforgettable climax.
All right, so we talked about the creature's, yearning for connection and his education and how Shelley uses language to give him a voice.
Yeah.
But I think it's time to really get to the heart of the matter.
Okay.
His relationship with Victor.
Absolutely. It's the driving force of the novel.
Yeah.
It's this relationship that's, it's built on a foundation of, fear, abandonment,
Yeah.
this twisted sense of responsibility.
I think you mentioned earlier there's a sense of tragedy woven into their dynamic.
There is. On one hand, you have Victor,
Yeah.
the ambitious creator who's just consumed by guilt and fear of his own creation.
Mm-hmm.
And then on the other, you have the creature who's abandoned and just yearning for acceptance
Yeah.
from the very person who brought him into existence.
So how does this dynamic actually play out?
Right.
What happens when the creature finally confronts Victor?
Well, their first real confrontation
Yeah.
is a pivotal moment in the story.
Okay.
The creature, having learned about his origins,
Mm-hmm.
tracks Victor down and demands answers.
Wow.
He asks that question that's been haunting him. Why did you create me only to abandon me?
That's such a powerful question. How does Victor respond to that?
Victor's overwhelmed with guilt and fear and initially recoils from the creature.
Yeah.
He just sees the monstrous exterior, the embodiment of his own hubris and ambition gone wrong.
So he doesn't really give him the answers he's looking for.
Not at first.
Okay.
He struggles to reconcile his initial vision, of
Sure.
creating a being of beauty and enlightenment
Right.
with the reality of the creature right there in front of him.
So it's like he's blinded by his own prejudice.
Exactly.
He can't see past the creature's appearance
Right.
to acknowledge his intelligence and emotional depth.
Yeah, and that inability to see him as anything other than a monster, it just further fuels the creature's rage and resentment.
Oh, wow.
He feels so misunderstood,
Yeah.
rejected, and ultimately dehumanized.
And that's where I think the creature's eloquence really comes into play.
It does.
He's able to articulate his pain and make a case for his own humanity.
He delivers this incredibly powerful speech.
Wow.
He's challenging Victor's assumptions and forcing him to confront his own role in the creature's suffering.
Yeah.
He argues that his isolation and rejection aren't a result of his inherent nature,
Right.
but a consequence of how he's been treated.
So he's basically saying, I'm only a monster because you made me one?
Exactly.
Wow.
And it's a powerful indictment of Victor's actions
Right.
and of society's tendency to just judge based on appearances. The creature makes the argument that even though he may look monstrous,
Yeah.
he's capable of feeling deeply, experiencing love, compassion, even remorse.
But Victor, driven by fear and disgust, he still can't accept the creature.
He can't, despite the creature's pleas for understanding and companionship.
Yeah.
Victor just remains trapped in that cycle of fear and rejection.
Oh, wow.
He agrees to create a female companion for him, but then destroys his work, you know?
Wow.
Terrified of the potential consequences of bringing another such being into the world.
It's like the ultimate betrayal.
It
He
is.
given a little bit of hope and then just snatches it away.
Yeah, and so the creature's rage just boils over.
Of course.
It's a pivotal turning point in their relationship.
Yeah.
The creature, having experienced this profound betrayal,
Right.
vows revenge.
Okay.
He says, I will be with you on your wedding night.
Oh, gosh, that's chilling.
It's like a curse, you know?
Yeah.
A promise of retribution that hangs over the rest of the story.
It speaks to the, cyclical nature of violence and revenge.
It does.
Victor's actions, fueled by fear and rejection,
Right.
have unleashed this force of destruction that he just can't control.
Right.
It makes you wonder if things could have gone differently.
It does.
What if Victor had listened?
Yeah.
What if he acknowledged his pain and tried to understand him?
That's the tragedy of their story.
Yeah.
There are those moments where it seems like a connection might be possible.
Right.
These fleeting glimpses of empathy and understanding.
Huh.
But ultimately, their shared history, the pain and the resentment,
Yeah.
just proves too powerful to overcome.
So it's a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked ambition
It is.
and the dehumanizing effects of prejudice.
Absolutely.
And the importance of taking responsibility for our creations, both literal and figurative.
Exactly. It's a story that challenges us to look beyond the surface,
Right.
to see the humanity in those we deem monstrous, and to recognize the interconnectedness of our actions and their consequences.
And what about the creature's end? How does his story end?
Well, after Victor's death,
Yeah.
the creature appears beside his body,
Okay.
expressing this mixture of sorrow
Mm-hmm.
and this strange sense of liberation.
Wow.
He acknowledges the pain he's caused and vows to end his own life.
So even in his final moments, he's looking for connection
He is.
that he was denied in life.
And that leaves us with such a profound sense of the creature's tragedy. He was a being capable of love and compassion, even remorse. But he was ultimately consumed by the darkness that had been inflicted upon him.
So what can we learn from this complex and tragic character?
Right.
What's Shelley's message for us, all these centuries later?
I think she's urging us to look beyond appearances,
Okay.
to challenge our prejudices,
Yeah.
and to recognize the shared humanity that binds us all.
Right.
The creature's story is a reminder that we're all capable of both good and evil, and that our choices have far-reaching consequences.
Yeah.
It's this call for empathy, understanding,
Right.
and a willingness to see the world through the eyes of those who are different from us.
I love that. And it
But-
resonates so deeply,
It does.
even all these centuries after Shelley wrote the book.
And I think it's a message that's more relevant now than ever.
Yeah.
In a world that's increasingly divided by fear and difference,
Right.
the creature's story serves as this powerful reminder of the importance of compassion, understanding,
Yeah.
and a willingness to bridge the divides that separate us.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
I'm just left with this sense of awe at Shelley's ability to create such a complex and enduring character. The creature is more than just a monster.
Right.
He's a mirror reflecting our own humanity,
Yeah.
our capacity for both good and evil,
Absolutely.
and the consequences of our choices.
As you move forward,
Yeah.
I encourage you to keep the creature's story in mind.
Okay.
Remember his complexities, his struggles,
Mhm.
and his yearning for connection.
Yeah.
And the next time you encounter someone or something that seems monstrous,
Right.
remember to look beyond the surface.
Yeah.
You might just find a story worth hearing,
Right.
a reflection of yourself,
Yeah.
and a call to create a more just and compassionate world.
This has been another episode of The Deep Dive.
Always a pleasure.